In section 1, we talked about biodiversity. And what biodiversity is it is differences that exist among living things. There are 3 kinds of biodiversity we talked about. The first one was ecological, in the sense that there are different ecosystems all over the world. For example, here in Alberta we have the prairies, and in the tropics, closer to the equator, you have a tropical ecosystem. And then there are diversities or differences that we see between different species. So for example, we might have a fern plant, and all the members of the fern plants which share similar characteristics, but their characteristics are much more different than, let's say, species that belong, or the wolf species, you know. So the other kind of biodiversity that we learned about, it has to do with this guy here. Well, actually, even biodiversity between species has to do with DNA. But the last one is differences among, or differences between species, that individuals of the same species. So an example of that would be if you just look in class, and there are many different variations in class, differences between members of the same species. For example, some people have the widow's peak present, and others do not have a widow's peak present. So that is DNA. Okay, and we're going to be talking about that in this section. So what DNA is, it is the molecule of life. It is the transmitter of information between one generation to another. It codes all the information needed for an organism to be what it is. That's what DNA is. So for example, if you're tall and you have blue eyes, and you have small feet, for example, that is all coded in your DNA. Okay, your DNA is found inside the nucleus of a cell, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. And this is a very, very nice diagram here, just showing you where DNA comes from and what it looks like. And we'll learn more about this in the next slide, but this is basically a chromosome, and then the chromosome is just really tightly packed DNA. And when you unravel it, it's kind of like, when you catch a little piece of thread that's hanging off from your shirt, and you pull on it, and you keep pulling on it, you keep pulling on it, and it's just this big string that comes out. And this is what's happening here, right, along this line here. And eventually, if you just go ahead and you take a closer look at this thread, so to speak, you see a very particular and predominant shape to this molecule. So, to study this, to get a good understanding of section 3, we'll have to understand the following questions. We're going to have to understand what is DNA. So what is this stuff, which I just kind of highlighted in the previous slide. Where do we find DNA? What does it look like? What does it do? And what's the difference between DNA, a chromosome, and a gene, which are things that are used, are terms that are used interchangeably, but they mean slightly different things. So here you have a picture of 3 different molecules of DNA, and it's a complicated molecule. So we'll talk more about DNA in the next slides here. So what is DNA? DNA is the molecule of life. Okay, you can think of DNA as a blueprint. Okay, so for example, you have architects, you have engineers who work very hard to create blueprints and create plans to build bridges, to build buildings, to build many things. And it's a very detailed plan. But then builders who construct bridges, for example, will look at these blueprints and go ahead and start building the bridge. So the DNA is like that blueprint. The DNA is a set of instructions that guides the activities inside an organism so that the organism can develop into what it looks like. So what does that mean? That means that if you have, as I said earlier, if you have brown eyes, the reason why you have brown eyes is because that information is coded in your DNA. And certain molecules that are responsible for building the organism will read that information. You can think about it that way. They will actually read that information from the DNA and take the necessary steps to construct whatever it's coded for. Okay, DNA stands for deoxyribose nucleic acid. Okay, it's found inside the nucleus of a cell, and it gives an organism its characteristics. So you are you, or the way you look, for example, because of your DNA. So if we just take a visit here in grade 8 science, I'm not going to go through the whole thing here, but if you look at the level of the organism and you just proceed down from there, we have the level of the organism, and then we go down one step further to the level of the organ system, and then from the organ system we have organs. From organs then we have tissues, and tissues are constructed by cells that have similar functions. So now we're at the level of the cell. So if you remember the cell from grade 8, this is a cell right here. The cell is made up of different organelles that all work together to do different functions that will contribute to the overall functioning of the cell. One important organelle is this structure right here. This structure is called the nucleus, and within the nucleus you're going to have the DNA. So that's where you find DNA. DNA is found within the nucleus of a cell. Okay? If you go ahead and you magnify the image of what's inside the nucleus, you're going to see a structure that looks like this. And this is a structure that's called a chromosome. And what a chromosome is if you just think about all the different characteristics that an organism has, right? There's a lot of information there. So there's a lot of DNA. Since DNA is stored inside the nucleus, it compacts, right, into packages. And these packages are called chromosomes. So the DNA that contains the information, the blueprint for life, is condensed and just packaged into these structures that look like X's almost, and they're called chromosomes. So that's all a chromosome is. Okay, that's what a chromosome is. Now, with chromosomes, the interesting thing is that it is the arrangement of DNA inside the cell in compact packages. But chromosomes don't come individually, they come in pairs. Okay, so chromosomes come in pairs. Okay, and different species are going to have different numbers of pairs of chromosomes. So for example, a human being is going to have 23 pairs of chromosomes. So if we have 23 pairs of chromosomes as human beings, how many total chromosomes do we have? Okay, so if you thought to yourself that we have a total of 46 chromosomes, right? You're right. Okay, but different species have different numbers of chromosomes, so we're going to have a different number of pairs of chromosomes compared to how many, let's say, dogs or cats have. So for example, dogs will have 39 pairs of chromosomes. Cats are going to have 19 pairs of chromosomes. So all species have a different number of chromosome pairs. So then we go to the next level here. Okay, so if we just take, again, kind of like take a string and unravel it and then magnify it, we get DNA. So this is what DNA is, and it's got a particular structure there. It's a ladder structure called a double helix. Okay, it's a double helix structure. I still need more practice writing with this mouse, but it's a double helix structure. And what it is you have two sides. Basically, it's two sides to a ladder that are connected with rungs. And that is DNA, and it just kind of twists onto each other, giving it this kind of double helix look. Okay. Now, if you look here at the DNA, you have to understand that you're going to have to understand how information is coded in DNA. And now we're going to talk about the next level. So we talked about after the chromosome, there's something called a gene. And this is a word I'm pretty sure most people are familiar with. So for example, we talked about, genes as things that are passed down from one person to the next, or, we talked about this person has brown hair because it's in their genes. Okay, well, where are these genes? Okay, so a gene you're going to find within a strand of DNA. Okay, so there's a strand of DNA. And all a gene is, it's an uninterrupted segment of DNA. So all a gene is a section of DNA. So for example, you could have a gene right here. You could have another gene right there, or you could have another gene right there. Okay? So in our example, we have segments of DNA, okay, that contain coded instructions for the organism, and that's a gene. So the gene part is the information that is actually coded for specific things like eye color, hair color, that sort of thing. Okay? The other term you're going to need to know is something that's called an allele. Okay? And what an allele is the expression of the gene. So if I have a gene here, for example, I'm using a gene that's going to code for eye color. Okay? Eye color, let's say this gene is going to code for eye color. Then we have multiple alleles, in other words, multiple expressions of that gene. So for example, one allele could be blue. The other allele could be brown. Okay? And that's an allele. Let's see, what else can I tell you here? DNA sequencing. Now we're going to look and see how the genetic information is coded. Okay? In order to understand that, we need to look a little bit closer at the chemicals that make up DNA. So here I have a strand of DNA, and the strand of DNA is connected. Part of the strand is these connections that are made between the two sides here. And on opposite sides, if we can just go down the middle here, just take a red pen here and just kind of go down the middle here for a second as best we can anyway. We're going to find that chemicals here on this side are going to pair up with specific chemicals on the other side. So we'll talk about that right now. There are 4 chemicals that cause the base pairing. They're called base pairings. So 4 bases. There are 4 bases that we need to be introduced to right now. So these 4 bases are, and I won't write them out for you. I'll just write out the first letter. The base is called adenine. Okay. Now adenine is going to bind with another base specifically called thymine. Okay. And then the other 2 bases are cytosine, And cytosine is going to pair with guanine. Okay? Sorry, pair. Cytosine will pair with guanine. Okay? Guanine will not pair with adenine or thymine. Okay? Likewise, thymine will not pair with cytosine or guanine. These are the only pairings that occur in DNA. Okay? So if we take another look at our DNA strand, okay, let's draw this one here, and we notice that we have this segment. Actually, we'll just do it this way. This segment here, okay, we'll do that. And if we look at the chemical here, we notice that it is adenine. So if it's adenine, what's going to be on the opposite side here? That's right, thymine, okay? It's going to be thymine. If we have cytosine on this side, we're going to have guanine on this side, okay? Likewise again, if we have thymine here, okay, then we're going to have adenine here. We have guanine here. Oops, I should have used the same color just to be consistent, but I forgot to change it. If we have guanine, guanine is going to pair with cytosine, okay, and those are the only pairings, okay, and it's through these pairings you can get many different combinations, and it's through these different combinations that the genetic information is stored, okay. So think about it this way: DNA is a set of instructions, okay. It's like having someone read the instructions to build the model, okay. And they read these instructions, they follow the instructions, and then after a little while they construct the model, okay. Now, so this is going to be, let's say, a gene here. This is going to be a gene, all right. Now, if we go ahead and start reading adenine, cytosine, thymine, and then we read that, then the cell recognizes the code, what it means, and will start to carry out functions that will carry out what is coded inside the DNA. So think about it this way: if we read information, we get information by reading. So if we read a certain letter, so the order matters and the order changes. So if we read, let's say, an example of a word, right, tar, okay, that's going to go ahead and convey a certain image in our mind, right? So we're going to think about maybe some black gooey stuff that construction workers put on the road to help plug in all the potholes we have after winter. That's what we can see if we say the word tar. But if we go ahead and we rearrange these letters, we start to see something different. So perhaps if we go like this, right, all of a sudden we have the same letters, right, but they're in different order. And once they get into a different order, they convey something totally different, okay. And so that's how the variety, the diversity, is coded inside DNA. So this would cause us to think of a rodent, okay. So that's the same thing here. So that's pretty much for DNA. All I want to say right now. I really hope that that's helpful for you. Okay, so let's go over the relationship between chromosomes, genes, and alleles. We discovered that chromosomes are really just tightly packaged DNA segments, or DNA, I should say, that are found in the nuclei of cells. Genes are just locations on the chromosomes themselves. Each chromosome has many gene locations. So you're going to be having multiple genes on any given chromosome. Chromosomes come in pairs. Okay? When it comes to inheritance, you will inherit one chromosome from your mother and another chromosome from your father. Now, since genes are locations on chromosomes come in pairs,
It follows logically then that genes must also come in pairs as well. Both genes in a pair will carry DNA instructions for the same thing, although the code might not be the same in both locations. Okay, we'll explore a little bit of what that means in the next slide. So what that means in the next slide, oh sorry, right here, what does it mean? Okay, it means that you're going to have genes located on chromosomes, on the pair of chromosomes that code for the same thing. So if I look at this segment of a chromosome, this is a chromosome pair. This whole thing here is a chromosome pair. Okay, so if I look at this pair of chromosomes and I look and I find individual segments here, these individual segments represent genes. So for example, here we have the letter A, and on the paired chromosome we have little a. Okay, so let's just say that this gene here codes for, I don't know, let's just start with something basic, eye color. Okay, so let's say that this is the location of the gene that codes for eye color. Okay, and let's say that big A, or capital A, means that that genetic code is for brown eyes. Let's just say that. We could designate any letter we want for any trait, but usually I have to admit they follow logically with the letters. So for example, the brown eyes, it would be more accurate to say that it was capital B, and blue eyes would be little b. But we're just going to go ahead and continue with this example because we just chose a letter arbitrarily here, a location arbitrarily. Okay, so there you go. That codes for brown eyes. Now, if we go to the next chromosome, right, we look at the exact same gene location, but on the other chromosome, we notice that there is a little a there. Okay, they're coding for the same thing. They're coding for eye color, but it's different. In other words, this would be blue eyes. Okay, blue eyes. Okay, so you will inherit these genes from both parents. Okay, you get one gene from dad and one gene from mom. Okay, so you inherit both chromosomes, one from dad, okay, one from dad and one from mom. Okay, the different expression of genes are called alleles. So here's the thing, this location here and this location here code for the same thing. They code for eye color. This is the gene location for eyes. So these genes code for eye color. These genes code for eye color. However, the expression of the gene are called alleles. So these letters now are actually the alleles. So this would be the allele for brown eyes, and this would be the allele for blue eyes. Different alleles are designated by different letters, and these are inherited. These are passed down from your parents. You inherit one from your dad, one from your mom. Okay, that concludes section 3.1. We're going to move on to section 3.2 next time.